Hey everyone, welcome to Photomotion Mirage. More specifically, welcome to your first animation in Photomotion Mirage. I'm so excited to see you here, and although Photomotion does require a little bit of learning at the beginning, I'm pretty sure you will absolutely love what you can create. I will leave you with Jack and David, who will be your teachers. I found the best way is to follow along and animate together, so feel free to pause this video at any point, rewind back if you missed something, and so on. Alright, that's all from me for now. Take it away, Jack.
Hey, what's going on there, guys? Jack here. We'll start this off by jumping into the Photomotion folder down here, which contains all of our projection systems like Parallax, Portrait, Horizon, Glacier, Depth, and of course, Mirage. Of course, we'll be accessing the Mirage folder down here, and then from that point, we'll be just clicking on this Mirage project file. We'll be giving After Effects a moment or two as we'll be loading a lot of files into the cache, just to make sure the project is a little bit more quicker. Okay, so when we're loaded into After Effects, we'll notice a lack of options around the viewport, and that's because Photomotion is a viewport-based application, so no scripts or additional extensions required. Most of the work is done within the viewport and effects controls, so there's little to worry about in terms of fiddling with loads of menus. All you need to do is just have this project folder here and you're good to go. Right, so with that being said, let's just double click on this Start Mirage button, and that will bring us into the main dashboard. From here, we can't really do much, but that's okay. Consider this a safeguard to make sure that we take the necessary steps in beginning our workflow. With that being said, just double click on this Add Photo in order to bring us into the Add Photo composition. We'll be importing our photo here by clicking on File, then Import, and then File. We're just going to click on the photo here and select Import. From that point, we'll see our image within this project tab, and then we'll drag this image into our composition, parenting it to the parent layer just over here. Let's adjust the scaling of this from said parent layer in order to ensure that all of our attributes are applied universally throughout our project. We can also change some of the positioning here too if we should choose so. Normally within projections like Parallax and Horizon, we'd jump to the dashboard and begin importing our layers in, but within Mirage, we'll need to create our clean plate first. So for those of you who are unsure, a clean plate is a background image with all of our subjects and layers taken out and only contains data on what we expect to be behind those objects. So within our example, we expect that behind this lady is more waterfall. So let's provide that data to After Effects. This will make sense on why we're doing this first in a minute, so just bear with us. Okay, so we're just going to select the base photo layer here and ensure that our time head is at the very beginning of the composition. Making sure that our playhead is at the beginning of the composition is pretty important. We're then going to select the clone stamp tool just over here, and then finally we're just going to double click on the viewport. So for those of you who have never used the clone stamp tool before, just a moment to explain it. How this tool works is just by copying parts of your image and basically just transplanting them on top of areas where we want to remove either an object or a person. Before starting, as we're dealing with an object with flow like this waterfall here, it's best to have the flow for the effect brought down. We've set the flow here around about 14%, just to keep a light touch. Right, so once that's done, we're just going to hold Alt on the keyboard to select the sampling area. We're going to try and have it close-ish to the subject, as we don't want the transplanted areas to contrast with the overall waterfall and make our clean plate seem a little bit artificial. We'll want to remove the entirety of her from this image using the clone stamp tool, and after, we should be left with an image like this. Pretty neat. We will be adding her back in, but later within this example. When we're finished, we're just going to swap out the clone stamp tool for the selection tool, otherwise we might end up with a couple of errors. So when we get back to the main dashboard, we should see that all of our options have become available. What we'll want to do within this step is start adding some animation to the waterfall. However, we'll need to mask it out first. To begin, we'll just double click on this Add Mask button over here. If we've already made our mask in Photoshop, we could import it in here by double clicking on the Import Mask button over here, but within this case, we'll be doing it solely in-house, so we'll be double clicking on Draw Mask. We'll then be greeted with this composition, and you'll notice that again, there's not really much going on. That's because all we'll be doing here is just creating a mask around this waterfall, so let's get to that now. First, select the layer down here, and then what we're going to do is just go back up here to the pen tool and start creating these points around the waterfall. What we essentially want to do is just section off this area from the rest of the image. If by the time that you've joined your last 2 points, the rest of the image has become slightly darker, you're in the right place. We'll want to add some feather to this mask, as without which the edges of this mask might stand out when we progress to animating our image. So let's select this layer and hit F on the keyboard. Of course, ensure whenever you're using any different tool, clone stamp, puppet point, pen tool, always make sure to swap it back to the selection tool. Right, you'll notice now when we get back to the main dashboard, we have a new button available for us called Animate. And of course, we're going to double click on it. Okay, so when we're in this layer, we're just going to make sure to select the layer at the bottom here, ensuring that our needle is at the very beginning of the composition. Once again, cannot stress the importance of that. And then we're going to go up here and just select the puppet tool. While this is repeated a couple of times, we're just going to make sure that our needle is at the very beginning of our composition with the numbers just over here reading 0. We'll begin putting loads of points around our waterfall here and then placing a couple of central points within areas that we want to see movement. Once we're happy, we'll then move our time head to roughly the 40 frame mark and then mark out. What we'll then start doing is just adding movement by these points by dragging them a little bit down. Again, we're just going to drag down these central ones as that's where we want to see movement. The ones at the very top are just there to stop movement where we don't want to see any. On top of that, we're going to be very subtle with this. We don't need to over exaggerate the movement in any way, shape or form. Okay, so we have down here a warning system what will tell you how long your animation currently is. Right now it's telling us that the animation is 30 frames in length. That's fair enough, but it doesn't match where we created our puppet animation, which is 40 frames long, which is what the number to the right is telling us. So if we left it from here, regardless of which time we created the puppet animation, we'd only end up seeing 30 frames worth of this animation. To fix this, use the marker down here within the actual composition, and that will move the loop time. Because we moved it to the 40 frame point, we'll now see this 40 frame mark become green. Excellent, that's the animation set up. We'll then go back to the main dashboard, making sure to swap out the puppet tool for the selection tool. You might notice actually that we have this distortion left on the left edge of our image, and that's due to the animation we just created. This is something that's fine, as we'll be cropping our aspect ratio, which will get rid of this problem. We'll just click on the resolution button over here and then look at changing this aspect ratio to portrait, which removes that issue. Cool, so if we preview this animation now, we can see this really seamless loop going on within our waterfall in the background. Already quite eye-catching in all honesty, but we still have layers to add, so let's get to that now. So just click on this layer 1 down here and then click on import mask. We'll be dragging in our original image into this composition and then parent it to the parent layer whilst holding shift. That will copy the attributes that we made ages ago at the very beginning of the video to this photo layer over here, thus making the two image layers exactly proportional in size. Next step, we'll be masking out this person here. So we'll make sure that we've got the base photo layer selected, not the parent layer, and then go up here to the pen tool, select it, and what we'll do is we'll just mask out this lady here from the overall image. What we essentially want is for the water to flow behind her. It's a small detail, but it adds heaps in terms of the immersion of the animation. So again, what we essentially have is this lady separated within her own layer, and if we see this transparent screen behind her, we're in the right place. Once again, because she's parented to this parent layer, she'll remain scaled proportionately within the main animation, so no need to faff about with image or scale. When we're finished, we're just going to swap out with the selection tool. Okay, so let's preview the animation so far. Very nice, it's really coming together now. That layer 1, although we haven't enabled parallax, just helps add that extra bit of immersion to the scene here. Small detail, but it really goes the extra mile. Let's look at adding some eye-catching elements over here within the animation, like particles. Just go over to the settings button over here and then click on the activate particles checkbox over here, which will activate our particle system. We have a myriad of different particles to play around with in all of our projections, including Mirage. You can kind of see that if we play the animation, these particles exist within the actual 3D scene, which is pretty neat. But in any case, let's just focus on making her pop out the scene a little bit more. We can go to color and then just fiddle around with these curves, making the overall background a little bit more darker. On top of that, we can then do exactly the opposite with our layer 1 here. Just click on it and then go to effect controls, fiddle around with these curves, and what we're going to do is just give a little bit more extra light to her in order to bring her out of the scene a little bit more. Once finished, we can then bring this animation into the export screen by double clicking on the export button just over here. First thing we'll notice within this composition are these auto loop numbers at the very bottom from our perfect cut system, and what that basically is telling us is that if we want to cut on 25 frames, we'll be rendering out no loops within our animation. As 25 frames within Photomotion isn't exactly a whole heap of time, we'll choose something else like this 100 frames. If we click on the frame count indicator over here, we can change it to 4 loops, which is 100 frames. We'll then just hit N on the keyboard in order to mark out, otherwise After Effects will render out the whole entire composition, which isn't exactly ideal. We'll then just go up here and then click on composition, and then click on this add to render queue. We'll then be greeted with the After Effects render engine down here, and we'll just click on this lossless here in order to bring up the output module settings. We'll then change this AVI to QuickTime, otherwise we'll end up with an animation that is ridiculously big in file size, and then we'll just hit okay. From there, we'll just check the output destination over here is fine, and then we'll click render. However, what if we want an MP4? There are two techniques in order to getting this out of After Effects, both of which require Adobe Media Encoder. We can either bring this project directly into Media Encoder, or, like within this example, we can render it out as a .mov and then re-export it out as an MP4. The decision is really up to user preference, although there are side effects of both, one being the collective projects can take up quite a lot of much needed space, whilst the other means that you have to wait for around about 2 renders. So once we're in Adobe Media Encoder, we're just going to make sure that this format over here is set to H.264, and then we're just going to hit the render button to the top right. Okay, so that's a basic example on how Mirage works. In case you want something that's a little bit more advanced, we have a plethora of classes available, and as usual, thanks for watching, and we hope you find this video useful and of course enjoy your photo animation journey.